Good morning, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day, February 14. Well, if you were in Chicago on this date in 1929, you might have read about the killing of a bunch of mobsters on Al Capone's orders. And that is known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Al Capone was born in Brooklyn in 1899 to poor immigrant parents. He lived in a tenement. Here's a picture of tenement housing from that era. And there was nothing unusual about him growing up. There's nothing that pointed to him as the gangster that he was going to be. He was okay in school at first, but then he started falling behind and he started hanging around at the Brooklyn docks. And he never went back to school. He dropped out. Early on, he got to know a gangster by the name of Johnny Torrio, and he ran errands for him. And eventually Johnny Torrio moved to Chicago, but Al Capone stayed his friend. And as a teenager, he worked at Coney Island. And here's a photo from one of the amusement parks there. And here he got in a fight and got his face slashed and got the nickname Scarface. When Al Capone was 19, he married his girlfriend, May. And he tried to be honest down in Baltimore, but that didn't last very long. The 18th Amendment was passed, and this suddenly made alcoholic beverages illegal, which was a great boon to organized crime. And this really helped the mafia. And in 1920, the Capones moved to Chicago and lived in this building, and he started up again with Johnny Torrio and was quite involved in organized crime under him. Well, they ended up leaving Chicago for Cicero. You see that on the left, when Chicago voted in a reform mayor. So they moved out to Cicero so they could keep working on their illegal stuff. And eventually Cicero got a little bit hot and the cops came. And there was a gunfight in which Al Capone's brother Frank was killed. And that's Frank on the right. So Johnny Torrio ended up leaving. He went back to Italy, and Al Capone decided to set up shop in the Metropole Hotel in Chicago. So he wasn't low-key at all. He was very lavish. You can see from this photograph all the different rooms involved in the hotel that were under his control. And he became quite popular. He was on the cover of Time. Some people saw him as kind of a Robin Hood character, but that didn't last very long because he was so violent. He owned a place in Miami, and here it is. And he was here when our event happened. So he was dominating the liquor trade, and he had a big rival named Bugs Moran. And the massacre on this day was 7 of Bugs Moran's guys get shot. Bugs himself got away right before the event happened. He sort of got wind of it and took off. And what happened is guys showed up as police. They had police uniforms on, and then they gunned down these 7 guys in a north side garage. Capone never was found guilty of this, but he was found guilty later of income tax evasion, finally arrested, and this was his prison cell at Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Harbor. He was here for about 6 years. Then he left, was in Baltimore, was in jail, finally died in Miami when he was only 48 years old, and here's his death certificate. He died of a heart attack, but syphilis was behind it. Now, the mafia is the subject of lots of fiction, movies. This is a movie called The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 1967. Other movies you might know, of course, the Godfather series, the movie Scarface, The Untouchables, but big part of our movie history. Now, Al Capone is buried in Hillside, Illinois, outside of Chicago. There's the family cemetery, and his stone, his mom's, his dad's, and his brother's. And if you go to Las Vegas, at the Mob Museum is the actual wall of the massacre. Somebody bought it and moved it down to Las Vegas, where you can see it today.